Today, let us start with lesson breathing and exchange of gases. Breathing includes both inspiration and expiration of gases. Respiratory organs. There are many types of respiratory organs according to habit and level of organization. First, types of respiration. First is anaerobic respiration, which is low yielding process. Oxygen is not used. Conversion of glucose into lactic acid in muscle occurs. In mature RBC, loss of mitochondria leads to anaerobic respiration. Then aerobic respiration, cell uses O2 for oxidizing nutrients. And here steps of aerobic respiration. First is external respiration, that is exchange of gas between blood and air. Then transport of gases to the tissue. Then internal respiration, that is exchange between blood and tissues. Then cellular respiration, here oxidation of nutrients in cells of life and they gain energy. Now, nature of respiration organs in different animals. First, lower invertebrates. Here, exchange gases by simple diffusion. Example is sponges, coelentrates, flatworms, etc. Then, moist and thin and vascular cuticle is present. For example, it is seen in earthworms. Then, tracheal system or network of tubes is present. For example, insects like cockroach. Then gills, plate-like or filamentous and vascularized structures are present. For example, they are seen in aquatic arthropods like crayfish, prawn and mollusk like unium. Then vertebrates. In vertebrate fishes have gills. And then amphibians have gills, moisten lungs, buccal cavity. In fishes, examples is cartilage and bony fishes, whereas in amphibians, example is tadpole, frogs, tadpoles, etc. Then reptiles, here lungs are used, for example snake, lizard. Then birds, lungs are used, pigeon, sparrow. Mammals, lungs are used, example whale, human, etc. Human respiratory system, here you can see the diagram. Now, respiratory passage. The parts involved in respiratory passage are nostrils, nasal cavity, part of internasals, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi and their branches, and respiratory surface of lungs, that is alveoli. Now, structure involved in respiratory passage. First is external nostrils. These are two small holes above upper lips lead to nasal chamber. Nasal chamber, which is 2 in number and has covering of pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium with sensor neuron epithelium called respiratory epithelium supplied with rich blood supply. They secrete mucus and trap dust. They bring normal air into body temperature. Then third part is internal nares. They are posterior openings of nasal chambers which lead into nasopharynx, which is a part of pharynx. Then nasopharynx. Pharynx is common passage of food and air, which leads into larynx, and as we know, pharynx is of 3 types: nasopharynx, oropharynx. Then now larynx. Here it is also called a sound or voice box, where air passes through the glottis and leave larynx, as many cartilages are there. The parts of cartilages which form larynx are: first is thyroid cartilage with a C-shaped dorsally incomplete cartilage called as Adam's apples, mostly which is prominently seen in males. Then cricoid cartilage lies between the thyroid cartilage and shape is like signet ring. Then arytenoid cartilage. These are two roughly pyramid shape forming posterior wall of larynx. Then fusiform larynx. They are two small elongated club-shaped nodules of elastic fibrocartilage which lie above and anterior to corticulate. These connect epiglottis to arytenoid cartilage. Then corniculate cartilage. These are two conical nodules of elastic fibrocartilage which lie near the arytenoid cartilage. Now epiglottis, which is single leaf shape which projects into the pharynx. So we can say by this there are total 9 cartilages, 3 paired, that is the arytenoid cartilage, cuneiform cartilage and corniculate cartilage, whereas 3 unpaired, which are the thyroid cartilage, cricoid cartilage, and epiglottis, which is unpaired. Now vocal cords. These are present in larynx and are of two types. First is true vocal cords. Vibration of these during expiration produces sound. Then false vocal cords, which are present just above the true vocal cords and do not participate in sound production. In males, the vocal cords are longer and thicker and under influence of androgens, whereas in female and children, the vocal cords are short and voice is sharp and high pitched. Trachea, they are also called as windpipe. It divides at fifth thoracic vertebrae. Bronchi, divided into four types and lead to alveoli. Primary bronchi, secondary, tertiary, and bronchioles. Now they lead into alveoli. These are about 300 million alveoli in the two lungs. A surface active agent, that is lectin, secreted by type 2 alveolar epithelial cells, reduce surface tension between alveolar fluid and air. It prevents collapsing of lung alveoli. Here bronchioles to alveolar ducts, then atria to alveolar sacs. Now lungs. They are paired of lungs present in airtight chamber known as thoracic cavity or chest cavity. Each lung is enclosed by two membranes known as pleural membrane. Between two pleural layers, the gap is called as pleural cavity filled with fluid called as pleural fluid. Pleural fluid helps in lubrication, expansion, and slide over the lungs when we are expiring or inspiring. The lungs are pink but become dark grey and molten in adults. The right lung is 2.5 meters shorter than to accommodate liver, whereas left lung is longer, but however it is narrower to accommodate heart. And left lung is divided into two fissures, whereas right lung is divided into T parts. Alveoli are the main sites where actual division of gases of O2 and CO2 takes place between blood and atmospheric air. Now two parts of human respiratory system are: first is conduction part. It conducts air from external nostrils up to bronchioles. Here cleans air, brings air into body temperature, make the air humidity, other functions. Then external respiratory part. It is main site of human respiratory system where the diffusion of gases of O2 and CO2 occur. Now here we can see the flow chart showing respiratory passage: external nostril, nasal chamber, internal ears, parts of larynx, nasopharynx, glottis, a part of larynx, then trachea, primary bronchi, secondary bronchi, tertiary bronchi, then bronchioles. Up to here we can say it is conducting part. Then from here we will see exchange part, that is alveolar ducts, atria, alveolar sac, and alveoli. Now let us know about steps involved in respiration. First is breathing. Inhalation of O2 and exhalation of CO2 is called as breathing and also called as pulmonary ventilation. Terms associated with breathing. First is apnea, which is normal breathing. Then hyponia, slow breathing. Hypernia, rapid breathing. Orthoapnea, difficult breathing except in upright position. Then apnea, no breathing. Dyspnea, which is painful breathing. Now diffusion of gases between alveoli and blood. Diffusion takes place across alveolar membrane, which and that is thin has high blood membrane. The tissue is when the tissue is very thin, the diffusion will be high. Then transport of gases. Blood helps in transport. Then diffusion of gases between blood and tissue. O2 from blood to tissue. Then CO2 will diffuse from tissue to blood. Now utilization of O2. Here it is also called as cellular respiration. For example, C6H12O6 plus 6CO2 gives rise to 6CO2, 6H2O plus energy. Then condition for efficient gas exchange. It should be easily permeable to O2 and CO2, should be thin, should be highly vascular, surface area should be very large, should be moist in nature. Then mechanism of breathing includes two stages: inspiration, expiration. Let us know about the inspiration. Inflow or inhalation of fresh air is known as inspiration. Diaphragm and external intercostal muscles play an important role. The role of diaphragm in inspiration: the contraction of muscle fibers of diaphragm cause it to become flattened lower down, thereby increasing the volume of thoracic cavity in anterior posterior axis. Here you can see increase in volume of thoracic cavity leads to similar increase in volume of pulmonary cavity, causes decrease in pressure within pulmonary cavity, as you know that pressure and the volume are inversely proportional, and it causes air enters from atmosphere to lungs and it moves from higher pressure to lower pressure. Now, role of external intercostal muscles. Contraction of these muscles helps in increase of volume of thoracic cavity in dorsal ventral axis, that is a backward frontward direction. Now, increase in volume of thoracic cavity leads to similar increase in volume of pulmonary cavity, causes decrease in pressure of pulmonary cavity, which is less than atmospheric pressure, causes atmospheric air enters into lungs, which is inhalation. Now, rate of air during inspiration. External nostrils, root, we will see the root of air during the inspiration. First external nostrils, then nasal cavity, then pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles and alveoli finally. Now, second process, which is expiration. The movement of air out of lungs when pressure within the lungs is more than the atmospheric pressure is known as expiration. Diaphragm. The relaxation of muscle fibers of diaphragm causes it to come in normal dome shape position, which reduces the volume of thoracic cavity. Decrease in volume of thoracic cavity leads to similar decrease in volume of pulmonary cavity, causes increase in pressure of pulmonary cavity, then causes movement of air from higher pressure to lower pressure, that is atmosphere. Now, here forceful expiration, we have capable ability to increase the strength of expiration by contraction of internal intercostal and abdominal muscles. First is internal intercostal muscles. Here contraction of these muscles lead to the pulling of ribs in downward and inward direction, decreasing the volume of thoracic cavity. Decrease in the volume of thoracic cavity leads to similar decrease in the volume of pulmonary cavity, causes increase in pressure of pulmonary cavity, causes movement of air from higher pressure to the lower pressure. Now, abdominal muscles. The abdominal muscle contracts, thereby compressing the abdomen and pushing its contents toward the diaphragm. The volume of thoracic cavity decreases, leads to similar decrease in the volume of pulmonary cavity, causes increase in pressure of pulmonary cavity, causes expansion of air from higher pressure to lower pressure. Now, route of air during expiration. Alveoli, then bronchioles, then bronchi, trachea, larynx, pharynx, nasal cavity, then external nostrils. Now, role of muscles in inspiration and expiration, as here you can see. Now, let us move to the next page. Rate of breathing in normal human man is 12 to 16 times per minute. Spirometer is used to estimate the volume of air in volume breathing. Hiccups is sharp, jerky, incomplete inspiratory sound which comes due to the sudden spasmodic contraction of diaphragm followed by sudden closure of glottis. Then stimulus is usually irritated of sensory nerve ending up digestive tract. So we'll get the sound. And snoring is a sound during sleep occurs due to a partial blockage of upper respiratory tract by tongue. Now let us discuss about pulmonary or respiratory volumes and capacities. First is respiratory volume. The quantity of air which our lungs can hold is known as respiratory volume. Types of respiratory volume. First is tidal volume or TV. During the normal breathing, the volume of air inhaled or exhaled is known as tidal volume. The value is approximately 500 ml. The value to tidal volume is lowest among all types of respiratory volumes. Then inspiratory reserve volume IRV. It is defined as additional or extra volume of a person can inspire by forceful inspiration. This volume averages 2500 to 3000 ml. Then expiration reserve volume ERV. It is defined as additional or extra volume of air a person can expire by forceful expiration. This volume averages from 1000 ml to 1100 ml. Then residual volume RV, the volume of air which remains in lung even after the forceful expiration is known as residual volume. It is about 1100 ml to 1200 ml. Here you can see the values. Then fifth is respiratory capacities. The sum of two or more respiratory volumes is known as respiratory capacities. Respiratory capacities are of 5 types: IC, EC, FRC, VC, TLC. Now let us discuss each of them. Here you can see inspiratory capacity IC, TV plus IRV ranges from 3000 to 3500. Then expiratory capacity EC, TV plus ERV, which is ranges from 1500 to 1600 ml. Then functional residual capacity FRC, ERV plus RV, 2100 to 2300 ml capacity ranges. Then vital capacity Vt, ERV plus TV plus IRV or IC plus ERV, which ranges from 4000 to 4600 ml. Then total lung capacity TLC, RV plus ERV plus TV plus IRV or IC plus FRC equal to 5100 to 5800 ml. Now, mammals have negative pressure breathing. It allows them to eat and breathe at the same time. In frog, positive pressure breathing occurs, so they can't eat and breathe at a time. Pulmonary ventilation per minute by minute of volume of respiration equal to TV into breathing rate. Except FRC, RV and TLC, all are measured by spirometers. FRC, RV and TLC cannot be measured by spirometer. Then exchange of gases. Exchange of gases occurs by diffusion based on pressure or concentration gradient. Factors questioning rate of diffusion. First is solubility of gases. Solubility increases or diffusion increases. For example, CO2 solubility is 20 to 25 times greater than O2. Then partial pressure increases, diffusion increases. Thickness of membrane, thin membrane, diffusion increases. Two sides of exchange of gases. First is exchange of gases between alveoli and blood. Diffusion membrane. All these three layers are about 0.2 to 0.3 micrometer, very thin. The three layers of diffusion membrane are thin squamous epithelium, then endothelial lining of alveolar capillaries, then basement substance. Now, partial pressure of CO2 and O2 at different parts are involved in the diffusion, as here you can see. Then exchange of gases between blood and tissues. The partial pressure of O2, that is PO2 in blood is 95, that is greater than PO2 in tissue, so it diffuses, and PCO2 of tissues, which is greater than PCO2 in blood, so CO2 diffuses to the blood. CO2 goes to the blood, whereas O2 goes into tissues. Now, transport of gases. Transport of O2. Blood carries oxygen from lungs to heart, and from there it reaches various cells. Oxygen is transported in the following manner. In dissolved form, about 3% oxygen is carried dissolved state through plasma. Then as oxyhemoglobin, is about 97% of oxygen is transported by RBC in blood. Hemoglobin is made up of heme and globin, that is iron part and protein part, which is red in color. Hemoglobin binds with O2 in a reservoir manner from oxyhemoglobin and transported. Single molecule of Hb can carry 4 molecules of O2, that is Hb plus O2 gives us HbO2. In normal person, the hemoglobin level is about 15 grams per 100 ml. Capacity of 1 gram of Hb combining O2 is 1.34 ml. Oxygen dissociation curve. A graphical representation of relationship between partial pressure of CO2 and percentage saturation of Hb with O2, which is sigmoid in shape or stage shape. The percentage of Hb that is bound with O2 is called as percentage saturation of Hb. Hb gets saturated to about 50% when PO2 is 25 mmHg. It means the blood containing about 50% of oxygen. The partial pressure at which the Hb saturation is 50% is called as P50. Now, factors affecting the O2 dissociation curve. This curve is very useful in studying the effects of factors like PO2, PCO2, etc. on binding of O2 with Hb. The curve may be towards the right or left. The shift towards right. Here, dissociation of oxygen occurs from the Hb in tissues. Factors involving to bend the curve towards right are low partial pressure of oxygen, high partial pressure of CO2, then Bohr's effects. For example, a rise in PCO2 or fall in pH decrease oxygen affinity of hemoglobin, rise in the P50 value. Then high hydrogen plus ion concentration and decreases in pH implies increase in acidity, then high temperature. All these factors are favorable for dissociation of O2 from Hb, which occur in the body tissue. Now, shift towards left. Here, association of O2 and Hb occurs. Condition is O2 curve towards left. High partial pressure of oxygen, low partial pressure of CO2, less H plus ion concentration and high pH, low temperature. All these factors are favorable for the association of O2 and Hb, which occur in alveoli. Rise of PCO2, H plus ions temperature and diphosphoglyceric acid shifts the HbO2 dissociation curve to the right and vice versa, raising the P50 value. The fetal hemoglobin differs from adult hemoglobin in structure and its affinity is for oxygen. Fetal hemoglobin has higher affinity for oxygen because it binds BPG less strongly. Thus, when PO2 is low, the fetal hemoglobin can carry up to 30% more oxygen than maternal hemoglobin. Therefore, oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve for fetal hemoglobin will appear on the left side. Now, myoglobin present in the muscle has more affinity to O2 than hemoglobin, so curve of myoglobin is hyperbolic in shape. Now, transport of CO2. CO2 in gaseous from diffuses out of the cells in the capillaries where it is transported by their different means. In dissolved form through the plasma, about 7% of CO2 gets transported in the dissolved form. It gets dissolved in the blood plasma and is carried in the solution to the lungs. CO2 is higher solubility than O2. So 7% of CO2 dissolved where only 3% of O2 is dissolved. Then as bicarbonate ion, about 70% of CO2 is converted into the HCO3 minus and transported in plasma. CO2 differs in the RBC where it binds with water forming carbonic acid H2CO3 and carbonic acid quickly dissociates into hydrogen and HCO3 minus ions. As it is unstable, the reaction is facilitated by an enzyme known as carbonic anhydrase, which is present in very high concentration in RBCs and it is small quantity in plasma. For example, here you can see the reaction. CO2 plus H2O adding carbonic anhydrase plus ions will get carbonic acid H2CO3 then added with carbonic anhydrase to form hydrogen ion and bicarbonate ion. PCO2 is higher in tissue due to catabolism, that is breakdown of glucose into H2O, CO2 and energy. So diffusion of CO2 occurs from tissues to blood with HCO3 ions and H plus ions are formed. HCO3 ions formed in RBC quickly diffuse into plasma where they carried to the lungs. Sodium is chief cation in extracellular fluid. At atmospheric site lungs, the process is reverse. Here you can see. Then bicarbonate ions re-enter RBC to bind with H plus to form carbonic acid, which quickly splits into H2O, CO2. Finally, CO2 diffuses from the blood to lungs, where PCO2 is partial pressure of CO2 is low. Now, third method of passage of CO2 is by RBC as carbanion hemoglobin HbCO2. About 20 to 25% of CO2 is transported as carbanion hemoglobin. CO2 enters in RBCs form a reservoir compound that is HbCO2. CO2 binds with amino group of globulin 14 which is part of Hb. The reaction is similar to oxygen but CO2 binds with protein part of Hb. Factors affecting the binding of CO2 plus Hb. In tissues, the high PCO2 and low PO2 in tissues are responsible for binding more CO2 plus Hb. Now in alveoli, low CO2 and high PO2 in alveoli are responsible for dissociation of CO2 from carbonic acid. Now in this way, CO2 bound to Hb form tissues is delivered at the alveoli where it is exhaled out. Under normal condition, approximately 4 ml of CO2 is delivered to the alveoli by every 100 ml of deoxygenated blood. Now Hamburg's phenomena. Here HCO3 minus ion diffuse out into the plasma and Cl minus enters. RBC is called as chloric shift. Whereas if chlorine move out and HCO3 minus come in, it is known as reverse chlorine shift. Then Haldane's effect, here related to transport of CO2 in blood based on simple fact that oxyhemoglobin behaves as strong acid and releases an excess of H plus ions which bind with bicarbonate HCO3 minus into form H2CO3 which dissociates into H2 and CO2. Heading Wiener reflex. Here, walls of bronchi and bronchioles have strength receptors and are stimulated when lungs are overstretched. The nerve impulses are sent along the vagus nerve to inhibit the inspiratory area. Now, result is expiration begins. Now, regulation of respiration. Breathing is an involuntary action. Normal adults breathe up to 12 to 16 per minute, where inspiration lasts for 2 seconds and expiration for 3 seconds. Infant breathes for 44 times per minute. Regulation of respiration involves both neural and chemical control. First is nervous regulation. The respiratory center is composed of group of neurons at medulla oblongata and pons. First is respiratory rhythm center located at medulla and region of hindbrain, causes expiration and inspiration according to the body needs in a rhythm. Then pneumotaxic center present in pons moderates the function of rhythmic center. Strong signals causes in shallow and fast breathing by shortening the duration of inspiration. Now chemical regulation. It gets activated due to increase in CO2 and H plus ion concentration, which in turn activates the respiratory rhythm center for alternating the rate of respiration. The CO2 and H plus ion sensitive receptors are found in first is aquatic bodies. They are located in aquatic arch. Then VS carotid bodies, which are present in carotid arteries, which supply blood to the brain. Increases concentration of CO2 in blood, lowers its pH, and low concentration of CO2 raises the pH of blood, then decreases pH of blood and increases the rate of respiration. Now, disorders of respiratory system. First is asthma, which is caused due to allergic reaction. Symptoms are coughing, wheezing, difficulty in breathing, sneezing, redness of bronchi and bronchioles. Then emphysema, which is caused due to excessive smoking. Symptoms: the wall of alveoli are damaged, lack of elasticity of walls, and bronchi and alveoli. Pneumonitis. Example: silicoitis and abscesses. Causes due to breathing of mineral salts, mineral dust such as silicon, abscesses, etc. They causes inflammation, coughing, and fibrosis. Then asphyxia, due to increase in CO2 concentration in tissues, causes acute hyperkalemia, hypoxia, lack of O2 supply. It may be of 4 types. First is hypoxic hypoxia. Here aerial PO2 is decreased and other values are increased. Then anemic hypoxia. Here O2 causing hemoglobin decreases. Then stagnant hypoxia. It causes due to local vasoconstriction or poor cardiac output. Then fourth is histotoxic hypoxia. The rare but often due to cyanide poisoning. Now mountain sickness. Above 8,000 feet, they causes breathlessness, headache, dizziness, irritability, nausea, vomiting, mental fatigue, and blushing, bluish tint to skin, nails, and lips. Then pneumonia. It is infection due to bacteria, causes accumulation of mucus and lack the more number of O2 and blood O2 level decreases. Carbon monoxide poisoning. Carbon monoxide binds with hemoglobin faster than O2, so it decreases the O2 level in the blood. SARS. It is full form is severe acute respiratory syndrome caused by human coronavirus, first seen in China. Then cyanosis. Color of skin and mucous membrane become bluish due to decrease in oxygen. Then pleurosis, inflammation of pleural membranes. Then hay fever, acute irritability in inflammation of mucous membrane of upper respiratory parts. Then divers may develop Casson's disease or Bent's disease or dysenterism. Then atelectasis, collapse of alveoli is called as atelectasis. Anoxia, absence of O2 in inspired gas. Then hypercapnia, here increase in CO2 content in blood. So we have completed the lesson, breathing and exchange of gases. Thank you.